CXC is very pleased to host this ceremony in our humble facilities, and I would now invite Dr. Didicus Jules, the Registrar, to welcome you to this ceremony this morning. Dr. Jules.
Thank you very much, Cleveland. Representative of UWI, Professor Vivian Roberts, USAID, Mr. Stephen Hendricks, the FDCC, Ms. Susan Branca, UNICEF, Ms. Kin Sandy Lewin, and colleagues, members of the media, friends. Today marks a real milestone in cooperation between multilateral and regional organizations. Multilateral and regional organizations. We've come here to sign an MOU that seeks to establish a sort of minimal line of collaboration between the various agencies represented here. As you know, all of the agencies present have been working in the Caribbean landscape for some time, and each of us pretty much works in our own silo. What this MOU is essentially about is that without compromise to the agenda or the program of any of these agencies, we are going to collaborate and create synergies where our work overlaps. So for example, as you can see from the, can you blow it up, please? Yeah, as you can see from this map, which seeks to show the lines of collaboration, if you look at USAID and CXC, for example, you will see that USAID has been working for some time now in the area of second chance education, providing youth at risk, okay, just leave it, youth at risk, skills training for students across the Caribbean, most of them out of school young persons. Now in CXC, we've developed a whole suite of examinations that have to do with creating multiple pathways to success. Essentially, our certification now is part of an articulated suite that allows someone to move from where you are to where you want to be. And so we are working with USAID to ensure that all of the skills training programs and so are articulated with the Caribbean vocational qualifications, the Caribbean Certificate of Secondary Level Competence. Likewise, you would see for years UNICEF has been involved in the area of early childhood development, and they've done an admirable work in promoting and advocating adherence to international standards, to setting up proper arrangements for early childhood in the Caribbean. The Foundation for the Development of Caribbean Children is partnering with UNICEF to ensure that we achieve the aims of universal early childhood provision. So essentially, we're looking at ways in which we can create these synergies. UE Open Campus, the University of the West Indies in general, playing a role in many of these fairs. And we're hoping that rather than continue to work in silos, sometimes around the same thematic areas, we can at least collaborate. We can share information, we can look at opportunities to create synergies, as we've done in the example I gave between USAID and CXC. One of the interesting things there in terms of our role as CXC is that as an examination board, there are really fantastic opportunities for convergence of initiatives. So for example, in the reform of our school-based assessments, we are talking about with USAID, for example, of having as the preferred SBA for students who are in the business cluster, participation in the Junior Achievers program. Now, many of you would know that the Junior Achievers program is something that simulates the whole process of coming up with a business idea, checking its viability, incubating it, liquidating it. Working with USAID, it is now possible for us to now have this as a preferred mode of SBA, which will be far more exciting to students because you're going to be participating in a real-life activity, running your own business. And there are possibilities even beyond the issue of certification, because student businesses that have been successfully run and have shown themselves to be viable can be converted instead of liquidated at the end of the school year into real life businesses. So students graduate as owners of their own successful business enterprises. Again, on the SBA front, to show how the partnership would work across the board, the UN agencies, you know, every year, many of the UN agencies usually designate a year as a year of something, whether it's a year of the forest or the year of people of African descent or whatever. A suggestion made to us by the Minister of Higher Education in Trinidad and Tobago is to have select themes for SBAs every year. So we can have 2 or 3 themes. If this year is the year of people of African descent, then it means we can designate that as a theme for SBAs. Regardless of the discipline, students can be encouraged to shape their SBAs around that theme. So if you're doing mathematics, you can look at the demographics of the movement of peoples of African descent across the world. Geography, you can look at the geography of that. Caribbean studies, history, you can see the possibilities. So we think this is really going to be a great step forward. We're not starting with any hugely ambitious plan. It is simply the agencies that we are all going to share information, exchange information, work more closely together, and take it step by step, from baby steps to what we believe will be a huge step forward for Caribbean kind. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jules. As Dr. Jules said, the United Nations Children Fund, UNICEF, is well known for its work around the world with children and has been playing a critical role in moving this MOU forward. I now invite Mrs. King Sandy Lewin, the country representative, to address you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I understand the effort of trying to get all the different actors together has been going on for quite some time. But the focus of all our efforts is up there, young people, children. And that's where UNICEF comes in. People have been talking about smart partnerships in education, and especially for education reform, for a long time. And those of us at the table, plus OECS, certainly do not represent all actors in the Caribbean who are working in one way or another in education. My role is to outline some of the specific objectives of this collaboration. And as I said, it's been going on for a while. I've just come in, and I'm honored to sign on behalf of UNICEF for an effort that started with my predecessor. And Ms. Spake Wannery, the deputy at UNICEF, has been the engine behind this. So I just want to recognize her contribution. The minimal line of collaboration was mentioned, and synergies were mentioned. And in smart partnerships, I think we're all trying to make the most out of our resources. It's not to say that when we're trying to do something on early childhood education, the limited resources of any of us can go a lot further when we bring our different inputs into that process. So I think that's really the biggest objective of this effort. So it's avoid duplication and make the most of our resources. From the UN side, we have other partners not at the table who also have one way or another in education, and that's UNESCO, UNDP, UN Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, ILO on youth vocational development. So, as I said, not everyone is here, but this is the beginning. And I think that's what's important, that those who are willing to engage in a collaborative effort. There are really 5 specific objectives. One is that we should act on the requests of the countries that we are here to support within a holistic framework. So we've agreed on that holistic framework, that we use our individual expertise and resources to assist the countries in a collaborative way. Secondly, that we share information amongst ourselves about the initiatives and ongoing work so that we deepen the partnership. Third is that we support a shift in the education system from where students are being prepared for one career to being equipped for the 21st century, such as teamwork and analytical, entrepreneurial thinking, so that they are able to embark on a multitude of possible careers. Fourth is that we use the technology and information in teaching to position Caribbean children for lifelong learning. So from the definition of UNICEF's lifelong learning starts from early stimulation to when, right from the time you're born, you start learning. And that care in parenting is very important, to early childhood education in the formal, semi-formal setup, to the preschool, as we call it, to primary school, secondary school. And of course, where we stop, but others continue, is in tertiary education and adult education. So that's a lifelong learning. And lastly, we support evidence gathering and research within the Caribbean so that we can better guide the educational reform efforts within the local, historical, social, cultural environment and the context of where we are working together. So that's really the specific objectives of this Memorandum of Understanding. So thank you for being here.
Exchange, awesome.
You want to pass you on over to this side and then you can exchange here?
Do 4.
Starting on my immediate left is Dr. Didicus Jules, the Registrar of CXC. On his left is Mrs. Branca of the Foundation for the Development of Caribbean Children, Ms. Susan Branca. Next to Ms. Branca is Mr. Stephen Hendrick of the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. And Mrs. Kin Sandy Lewin of the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, and Professor Vivian Roberts of the University of the West Indies. I said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. That brings us